And a good Wednesday afternoon. Thank you so much for jumping on here on newsnation.com, newsnationnow.com, and the News Nation Now Facebook pages, as well as your favorite local television station all across the country. We want to focus right now in the South as we are at the very beginning of severe weather season. Tornadoes are a possibility in the South. You're taking a live look right now in Vicksburg, Mississippi. This is kind of right in the heart of what the National Weather Service is calling a high-risk area for severe weather. A tweet from the National Weather Center Storm Prediction Center says an outbreak of severe thunderstorms, including long-track intense tornadoes, large hail, and damaging wind gusts are expected across the Mississippi Valley. This is what you're taking a look at right now. It's all across the Southwest as well. We're talking again about that high risk. When we talk about this, we're talking about Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Memphis, Tennessee. Some very prominent areas could see this track of tornadoes. Gerard Jebaily is a meteorologist for us on News Nation. He joins us now live from Mississippi. Gerard, you're just south of Memphis. Kind of walk us through the expectations of what we could see. And before you do that, I do want to encourage anyone watching on Facebook across the country, ask us a question on Facebook. We will bring in Gerard to answer some of those questions for you, locally speaking, as well as he can. But Gerard, it's serious if you're out there on the road looking for these storms.
Aaron, this is a particularly dangerous day. The wording you use from the Storm Prediction Center is not wording they use that often. Only in the most intense situations do we see this sort of thing. So today, even though it looks kind of cloudy and gloomy down there, we are expected to see conditions rapidly deteriorate, and we are going to see explosive growth with thunderstorms. You can already see on the radar back there, we already have tornado watches in effect, all those yellow areas. More are going to be issued, especially for central Mississippi and in through Alabama this afternoon and evening. Those storms right now already have had a history over the past day or so producing severe thunderstorms. Again, back to the west, or severe weather. We're talking hail, damaging winds. Today, it's pretty much a veritable powder keg. This is pretty much as high of conditions as you could get, or the most ripe conditions you can get for severe thunderstorms, where tornado is not just a possibility. They're a likelihood today, and there is very good possibility they could be strong, large, violent, long track, meaning long lived. So we're not here to overly alarm anybody, but this is one of those days where everyone in these areas needs to very closely pay attention to what's going on, especially this afternoon and evening. Again, we're just south of Memphis right now. We are likely going to be heading a little more into the zone to be making sure we are covering this very, very fully, but also very carefully. I've been tracking storms for about 20 years. This is one of those days that may go down as a top 10 day if things happen just right, or wrong if you think about it. It could be one of those days that ends up being listed. We don't want to. We certainly don't hope that this happens, but it could be listed along with one of those days like what we saw with Tuscaloosa some years back. And those are days that really get people's attention if they live in the South, Aaron, especially a lot of these locations that are very familiar with severe weather. They should be still paying attention today more than a normal day.
Well, Gerard, as we take a look at the map, and again, we're looking now live at the Mississippi River, the Mississippi Valley is the expectation of what could be a hard hit area. And again, we hope this doesn't happen, but to your point, we do want to prepare people. You're just south of Memphis in Mississippi right now. I'm interested in your track as you say you're going to where you expect the harder hit areas to possibly be. So where are you going? Are you going south to Jackson or all the way down to Vicksburg, what we're looking at on our screen now?
Well, the high risk that you discussed is just to my south here. Between it does include Jackson, but central Mississippi back into portions of Alabama. You don't have to be in that high risk to see severe thunderstorms today, but that is going to be the most likelihood. So Jackson, Mississippi is inside of that, as well as other communities. And we're talking Greenville, Mississippi, right there on the border, Greenwood, Mississippi. Clarksdale's on the edge of that, but this is going to stretch all the way through Starkville, Columbus on the border. Tuscaloosa is going to be on the edge of that as well, and Birmingham will be under threat later on tonight.
What about a time?
Things are just about to get going here.
Yeah, give us that timing. You say it's about to get started. I'm from Arkansas. I understand severe weather season. I know what's coming potentially, and I know right now Arkansas, as you see the yellow marks on the screen there, about half, almost 60% of Arkansas is covered under a tornado watch. So as Arkansas battles that, Louisiana battles that, Mississippi soon to battle that, what is the time frame you're looking at?
Aaron, normally when we have the worst severe weather, it tends to happen late afternoon and evening. It certainly can carry on into the night as well. So mornings are usually not a time that we see it as active, and is a pretty good reason for that. I'll take you through the timing. So let me explain why the timing is the way it is. Severe weather is kind of like a wildfire. It needs a certain kind of ingredients in order to really get going. It needs a lot of fuel, like a wildfire. Fuel for these thunderstorms are essentially it's warm, moist air near the ground. And next thing is you need something to really drive these thunderstorms. We're talking what this is called wind shear. That's where winds increase in speed and change in direction as you go up in the atmosphere. That right there is like a bellows to a very well-fueled fire. And as you can imagine, that will just explode and feed these storms. So we get the most fuel with the warm, moist air in the afternoon and evening when we have the most sunlight, when the temperatures tend to be the warmest. And that's why the worst of it is likely going to go through areas like Mississippi and through Alabama later on tonight. So the timing, again, late afternoon to evening, as you just saw there on some of the graphics that we have, are showing you that most of these thunderstorms are continuing to blow up now, but they will just increase in size, strength, and trace through Mississippi this late afternoon. And then later on tonight, they will be making their way in through the Birmingham area. So here is one of the forecast models that we have in-house here, and it shows you as we move past noon, we'll start to see more storms increasing, especially that line back to the west. There's going to be embedded supercells. Supercells are the worst kind of thunderstorms, rotating, and they have the potential to cause tornadoes and more damage than any other type. So by the late afternoon and evening, moving through Mississippi and then into the night hours where it's unfortunately dark, that'll be moving in through Alabama. And you can see that pink area is the high risk area, but still the moderate risk area, that red is surrounding it. Still
Gerard,
plenty of activity in those. So.
I want to bring up that pink area, and we are in the high risk area according to the Storm Prediction Center. What constitutes high risk? Is that a percentage of the likelihood that a severe storm could develop?
It is the likelihood of seeing severe weather within that zone, but it's a very difficult thing to try to describe. I'll do my best with it here. So the way they set this up is when the conditions are, of course, more elevated, they'll increase the likelihood. And so there are chances that you may see severe thunderstorms or severe weather, a certain type, such as a tornado, within 30 miles of any point. So there is a 30% chance today that you could just throw a dart and hit inside that pink. There's a 30% chance of seeing a tornado within 30 miles of that point. That's actually a pretty high number. Doesn't seem like it, but that really actually is. So any of those communities were likely or most likely to be hit inside those areas. And then, of course, it steps down from there. But even on a day where we have an enhanced risk for severe thunderstorms, that can be a pretty busy day. And today is a more rare high risk. And that's what usually grabs meteorologists' attention more than anything else.
Our Gerard Jebaily's attention as he is now on the road tracking these storms for us. And if you are on Facebook right now, whether it's the News Nation Facebook page or your favorite local television station's Facebook page, ask any questions that you have. If you're in Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, those are the states right now that are most likely to see severe weather. But Gerard, we were talking on the phone before we started chatting here, and this is day one of what could progress into a multiple day situation with this system of storms.
We're actually already on day two, Aaron. Technically, if you really wanted to go back, we could say it's almost day three, but this is a new system. So this is day two of a news system yesterday. It was back in Oklahoma, parts of Kansas today, across the Deep South and Gulf Coast states. Tomorrow, it is going to be bullseyeing the Carolinas. So anyone that might be in the Carolinas, what happens today could be a similar setup for what we have there tomorrow. So we have a large swath of the United States going from Texas all the way to the Carolinas that is going to be impacted by the same storm system. And that means multiple days of severe thunderstorms. And here we go. We're starting day two. Day two may be the worst of it as the storm's reaching full strength. But even tomorrow, yes, another day of potentially likely dangerous severe weather across the Carolinas.
What are some of the tips? I want to jump onto the National Weather Service Twitter page right now. If you're in this area, there are obviously some things that you need to prepare for. By no means are we saying that there's a storm headed your way right now. We don't know if that's going to happen, but that's why Gerard is here. That's why Chief Meteorologist Albert Ramon are here at News Nation to keep you safe. But there are some things that you need to prepare for, and one of those things, Gerard, and I think it may be one that kind of we forget about, is simply charging your phone.
Very important. You need to be able to get information and you need to be able to get warnings. And we tell people this all the time. You need to be able to get warnings in more than one way. And one of those ways is your cell phone. One of those ways that you cannot rely on are tornado sirens. If that is your way to get alerts, remember, tornado sirens are not designed to be heard indoors. You may be able to hear them, but they're designed to alert people outside who may be out of reach or out of touch. So have a cell phone handy. You also want to have a television nearby. That's a great way. Some sort of source, weather radios, to be able to get warnings and information. Yes, keeping your phone charged all day long. If you don't already have a severe weather plan, it's not too late, but you want to get one together quickly. You want to be able to seek shelter within a minute or two, suitable shelter of a warning going out. Once a tornado watch is issued, that means you should already be thinking about all the plans of action that you need to be able to take. And so we're already starting to see that now. Aaron, one of the things that I want to bring up, and this is what's somewhat most concerning about parts of the Deep South, is they're not unfamiliar with tornadoes. However, there is a big difference between what we call classic tornado alley, which is the Plains states, Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and the Deep South. There's some major differences that make the same sort of weather much more dangerous for the Deep South here. And some of those differences are, one, much of the Deep South is covered in trees, makes it very difficult to see some of these things coming. And that's why we can't tell anyone that they should go outside to look for it, because a lot of times you will not see it coming. Two, much of these regions tend to see the kind of severe weather where it gets wrapped up in rain. These are high precipitation storms. Sometimes and oftentimes they get very difficult, or they are very difficult to spot. Say a tornado from a distance, you may not see it until it's practically on top of you or at all. And third, Aaron, this is one of the most concerning, is that unlike parts of the Plains states, the Deep South has a very widespread population in what we would call not just suburban, but we're talking rural populations that live away from cities. And many of those people scattered throughout all of these areas may live in mobile homes, pre-manufactured homes, which are notoriously dangerous and deadly. So we want to give some recommendation to those folks. They should be able to reach a suitable shelter, not a mobile home, not a car. Vehicles are another notoriously dangerous place to ride out severe weather. Be able to find suitable shelter within 1 to 2 minutes. If you cannot get to one of those shelters within that window of time, you want to get there before the warning even happens. Try to think of a shelter or somewhere that you might be able to go now when the watch comes out, when a tornado watch comes out, so that you can be easily and very quickly able to seek suitable shelter when a warning finally does get issued.
Well, you bring up a really good point, and it's something that as I was listening to you, you mentioned being prepared when a watch was issued, and I think that's important for people to understand. Obviously, when a warning comes out, everybody's focused on, let's go now, let's go. But when a watch is issued, you need to be proactive, and some of those things that you just mentioned, I want to read from the National Weather Service. You mentioned the worst options for trying to get away from a storm: mobile homes, vehicles underneath a highway overpass. The good options are interior room of a well-built home, and then of course inside your storm shelter. And I think that's important as we start to look at watches that have been issued for areas like Arkansas and the western part of Mississippi. We do have one question, Gerard, I want to jump into right now. This is from Leslie Williams. She's worried about Alabama and when we could start to see tornado watches for Alabama.
It will likely be later on tonight for Alabama. First, Mississippi's going to get hit with it, so she can be watching what's going on to her west. So Mississippi this evening, and as we move likely into the, say, 9 or 10 o'clock hours, I would say by that point they ought to be looking at potentially, more than likely, issuing watches for Alabama. So it's going to be a busy night. And unfortunately, Alabama is going to be suffering this in the dark of night, making it, of course, even more dangerous. So everywhere through Tuscaloosa to Birmingham, as you can see, each of these individual cells could be spawning not just one or two tornadoes. It could be a string of them along the way. And we will have multiple cells that are going to go through. So it's going to be a very busy night for everyone there. And I encourage, especially those that might try to go to bed early, have some way of having being able to be woken up in the middle of the night to be able to get to shelter. A weather radio, and usually your cell phones are going to go off in those situations, but you need to be able to seek shelter very quickly. Yes, you did a very good point. You want to be interior of your home, put as many walls as you can between the outside and the weather. You want as many as you can, and that means away from windows. So we try to tell people, try to find the best suitable shelter you can find in your home, and that's unique to everybody's home. You may find a better spot. We also say bathrooms tend to be good. They have a lot of plumbing and tile where the walls tend to stay up a little bit better. But you have to sort of make that assessment yourself and look and find the best place to try to survive the worst.
And be ready. That is one thing that we'll continue to look at, as the National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center has said that there is a high risk of severe storms across the South. Many of the states you see on your screen right now, Arkansas is dealing with it right now, as is eastern Louisiana. We're focused on Mississippi, where Gerard Jebaily, our meteorologist, is located today. He will be continuing to track those storms. And Gerard, we're going to keep you here for about 9 or 10 more minutes, if you don't mind. And we want to answer any questions that you may have on Facebook, whether you're watching on newsnationnow.com or our News Nation Facebook page, or any of our local TV stations' Facebook page. We do have another question for you, Gerard, from Rebecca. Are the storms bound to get bigger as they cross the Mississippi River?
The answer is yes, because we are going to be seeing that line enter a much more favorable and ripe environment for them to grow. So yes, what you're seeing to the west at this moment is not how things are likely going to look as they move into Mississippi and Alabama. Things are really going to grow in size and intensity and overall coverage. And even places like Birmingham, Alabama, they may get multiple rounds of severe thunderstorms. So you may have one go by and then another one on its heels. So that's the other reason why we are also seeing this high risk being put in place, because it may not just be one and done. You may have one morning and then you may be set up for another one right behind it. So it's going to be a very busy evening and unfortunately a very busy night where things are the most dangerous. Once it's the dark of night, that makes it even more difficult. We have chasers and spotters all over this, but it still makes it very, very tough when we are still limited by what we can see in daylight, with trees, with terrain. We're going to try our best to spot these things for everybody, but radar is always a great tool, but we don't always know for sure what is happening at ground level. So we're going to try our best to track these throughout the afternoon, evening, and overnight.
And you're seeing this pink area, which is that higher risk of severe weather, continue to grow as the hours continue to grow. More questions coming in, Gerard. We're now talking about further east into Georgia and North Carolina. We do see some of the risk there. If you're looking at the radar of this future storm intensity, that there is some risk out that way further east, but will that risk enhance as we get into the overnight and early morning hours of Thursday?
Well, Aaron, like we talked about, the height of a lot of this severe weather happens when we have the most energy. We have the most energy during the afternoon and the evening. And as the night goes on, especially as we get, maybe after 2 in the morning or so, a lot of times we lose that energy, but it comes back down. And then as the sun comes up, we see it intensify. So today's risk is across Alabama, Mississippi, and it does reach the edge of Georgia. But tomorrow, that whole zone shifts right back across Georgia into the Carolinas. So the early morning in, say, Atlanta, Georgia, through maybe Augusta, Georgia, is where that will be. But we'll see things really pick back up again and likely light up in an even higher intensity as it gets to the Carolinas. So what you're looking at right there is Thursday's risk. Right now, it is a moderate risk, 4 out of 5. But it could possibly reach another high risk day of 5 out of 5. We're hoping that it won't. We're hoping that the storm itself, the storm system, will be a little bit weaker, but really it doesn't matter. 4 out of 5, a moderate risk, is more than enough to pay close attention to. It's going to be a very busy day across the Carolinas tomorrow, and Alabama through Georgia late tonight into the early morning hours.
All right, Patricia, I hope that answers your question. Got one from Megan. What is the threat for New Orleans? I'm assuming that threat would likely expire as we move into the afternoon hours today. Megan says her dad is on vacation there.
That's a good question. So New Orleans isn't exactly in the heart of what's going on here. They are certainly in the zone. As you can see, they're in that enhanced risk. Lake Pontchartrain, as you can probably tell, as Albert is zooming in on it for us. Thank you, Albert. So New Orleans is still in the zone. They could be seeing a few thunderstorms tonight, possibly severe. Once we get into the late evening to overnight hours, we'll see that risk drop pretty substantially as that line goes through. So you're going to see a line of thunderstorms approaching from your west, 1 or 2 may be severe, and then they'll cross out. So I would say by the early morning hours, you'll likely be very much in the clear for New Orleans. And New Orleans isn't exactly in the bullseye compared to what's going on to the north in Mississippi and central Alabama.
All right, Gerard, let's wrap this thing up. I know you are there in your weather car, your vehicle, going to start moving. As we look at this, and again, want to thank Chief Meteorologist Albert Ramon for being there with us behind the scenes a little bit. You can obviously follow Albert tonight on News Nation. We start at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock Central. As we look at what you called the bullseye right now, let's talk very quickly as we wrap up about that enhanced risk, that high risk that we're seeing really all across the state of Mississippi.
All right, so Albert has been very kind to keep the graphics going for us today. And Aaron, things today ripe for an outbreak of severe thunderstorms. An outbreak is not just 1 or 2. It could be a dozen or more. Tornadoes, severe weather reports. It is a dangerous day. Again, the high risk is as high as you can go, and we are expecting things to really light up and become violently severe as we move into later this evening and overnight across Mississippi and Alabama into the late night hours, making it particularly dangerous due to the fact that you cannot see much of what's going on. So several thunderstorms will be ongoing as we move through this evening in through Mississippi. As we cross into, say, the 10 o'clock to the midnight hour, they'll be moving across Alabama, and everywhere should be paying very close attention throughout tonight as we head through what will be a very significant severe weather risk for these areas. Everyone should have their severe weather plans ready now, be ready to put in action at a moment's notice. And everyone should be paying close attention. We'll be trying to update again all evening long. Albert Ramon will be on News Nation starting at 5 p.m. Central Time tonight, tracking much of these thunderstorms as they track through the area. And I'll be here in Mississippi, most likely, following what's going on. And we'll be bringing updates throughout that time zone as well. 5 p.m. we will begin, and we'll be tracking this through at least 8 p.m. Central.
Gerard Jebaily, stay safe, my friend. I know you're out there. I know this is what you feel like you need to be doing for our viewers to keep people safe. Thank you for doing that, and stay safe, my friend.
Thank you, Aaron. Have a great day.
All right, we will check back in with Gerard as needed. We will be here on this website, on this Facebook page, as often as we need to, as we feel that we need to. But we wanted to tell you what was coming. Now, as this continues to sweep through the country, through the South, we encourage you to download our free app. It is News Nation Now on your mobile phone store. Download it. We'll be pushing all this information out to you as soon as we get it. I also urge you to follow our meteorologist. Albert Ramon is our chief meteorologist. It is Albert Ramon, ROMON TV. That is on Twitter, so Albert Ramon TV. And follow Gerard as well. He is going to be out and about in Mississippi. That is Gerard Jebaily, GERARD JEBAILY. So follow those guys. Follow News Nation Now. We're going to be bringing you this information. As you can see, a high risk of severe weather is covering such a gigantic part of the South, parts of Louisiana, the southeast part of Arkansas, most of Mississippi, and parts of Alabama. All of this will change rapidly, but we will be here throughout to keep you as informed and, most importantly, as safe as possible. Again, we'll check back in as needed. I am Aaron Nolan. Have a fantastic afternoon.